Hello, a substantial percentage of population today suffers from some or the other problem related to the sexual aspects of one's life. The chapter of sexual disorders in DSM-5 deals with this subject. Sexual disorders are experienced by patients as extremely embarrassing, socially impairing, and at a personal level very humiliating and shameful. These disorders cause great distress to the patients. To discuss the subject today, we have with us psychoanalysis consultant Mr. Vimanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Can we start with what sexual dysfunctions are all about?
Sexuality is a very natural phenomenon. Sexuality is also a very pleasurable phenomenon. And sexuality also is a compulsive phenomenon. However, if uh, the sexual process is not happening in a natural way, if the pleasurable process becomes a process of distress and pain, if one is not able to perform the, the reproductive act or the pleasurable act in the sexual process in a normal way, then we say the adult, and of course we are talking only of adults, the sexually active adults, we are not talking of children or very old people. So those who are supposed to be sexually active and be able to enjoy the sexual act, if they are not able to do it, then we say it is a instance of a sexual dysfunction. And we are here dealing with uh, those cases where there is no biological problem with the person. So before we look at the psychiatric sexual issue, we first have to rule out that there is no biological problem with the person. If there is a biological problem, the person would have to go to a sexologist and not to a psychiatrist. So once the sexological problems are ruled out, we are clear that there is nothing wrong with the body per se at either the organ level or the hormonal level or any biochemical level. And yet the person is finding it difficult to lead a normal sexual life, then we say the person is suffering from sexual dysfunctions or sexual disorders.
Right. What disorders does this chapter cover?
If we look at the whole sexual process, we can divide it into 4 parts. First, a person must have interest in sexuality. Second, the person should be capable or feel aroused to enter into the sexual act. Third, performing the actual sexual act. And fourth, successful completion of the sexual act. Now,
Right.
at all the 4 levels, human beings can have problems which are of psychological nature, and this chapter deals with those problems. So let us look at them one by one. First, the interest in sexuality. So when we talk of sexuality, we are talking of both men and women. And therefore, in this chapter, we will be talking about sexual disorders of men as well as sexual disorders of women. And both of them have sexual disorders in all the 4 phases of the entire sexual process: interest, arousal, performance, successful completion. So let us look at it one by one. First, interest. If a male does not have adequate interest in sexual intercourse or the sexual act, we say he is suffering from male hyposexual disorder. If a female does not have adequate sexual interest appropriate to age, we say she is suffering from female sexual desire interest. Let us say the first stage is successfully passed, and that person goes to the second phase of getting prepared for the act, the arousal part. So if the male cannot have a sustained erection then we say the male has erectile dysfunction. Right? And if the female cannot have it, then the female has the female arousal disorder. After that, the actual sexual act happens, and in the actual sexual act, there is a specific female disorder for which we don't have a corresponding male disorder, and that is penetration disorder, or a very high amount of pain felt during the sexual performance itself. So this disorder in females, for which there is no corresponding male disorder in DSM-5, this female disorder is known as the pelvic pain disorder, or penetration disorder. And then the last phase of sexual act, the completion of the sexual act, where there are two disorders of men, but one disorder of for women. So for women, if the sexual act completion is not right, is not adequate or adequately normal, we say she is suffering from orgasmic disorder, where she is not capable of experiencing an orgasm in its appropriate way. And for men, there can be premature ejaculation or delayed ejaculation. So there is a premature ejaculation disorder and a delayed ejection disorder. So these are the disorders for men and women related to these four phases of the sexual act that are discussed in this chapter.
Right. So what is the psychoanalytical explanation of causation of sexual dysfunctions?
Psychoanalysis gives many explanations because it is very clear that with no biological problem, the person is still not able to perform the sexual act in a normal way and derive its pleasure or experience himself as a very normal or socially capable or sexually capable person. So obviously there is something very deep in the person which is not allowing him to live a normal life and experience the normal pleasures. We should also note that it is very shameful and extremely distressing to the person if he is not able to perform sexually. This is something he would like to hide from practically everybody. It's an extremely shameful and humiliating thing for anybody who is young in sexually active age not be able to perform the sexual act. It is seen as a very debilitating and very humiliating, very shameful, and a very evaluating act which tells you that the person is good for nothing. Because a huge amount of self-esteem is associated with that performance.
Okay.
So this is the background in which we look at it. Now, why somebody is not able to perform? Now, there may be personal or social reasons, or there may be deeply embedded psychoanalytic reasons. Let us first clear out the personal and social reasons. The personal and social reasons now are not many, but they used to be very powerful once upon a time. They refer to the spiritual and the cultural aspect of the upbringing of the person, where the person had learned that it was a sin or it was not proper to indulge in sex. And that kind of guilt penetrated very deep into the person. And that was a usual avoidance, or the result or the result of it used to be some sexual problem, particularly related to the interest in sexuality. There was also an element which was peculiar to India, which had a very strong tradition of Ayurveda. That we were taught for a very long time that the semen is a very valuable part of the body, and correspondingly the ejaculation material for the women also. And when you lose that, you have a reduction in ojas and therefore reduction in mental and physical health. And therefore one must preserve it and be as celibate as possible. And this spiritual and Ayurvedic cultural context also created hypo interest, hyper guilt towards the whole sexual process. So these were the largely personal and socio-cultural aspects of some of these problems. And psychoanalysis accepts them completely that it might be true that they might be the problems which are largely conscious and pre-conscious, not necessarily unconscious. And now we come to the deeper aspect of the unconscious problems. And every school of psychoanalysis has its own explanation of these problems. Let us look at the problems in the chapter and what each school has to say about them, and then understand it much better. First, the Freudian school in psychoanalysis goes by the unresolved Oedipus complex as being responsible for most of the problems described in this chapter of sexual dysfunctions in DSM. The idea there is this: because the Oedipal problem is unresolved, the person feels that a sexual act in the outside world equates or gets equated to the Oedipal act in the inside world. And because of that, the person fears Oedipal castration. And it is the fear of castration which leads the person to run away from the act, have disinterest in the act, not being able to sustain an erection because the fear is if the erection is sustained, castration will happen. And also premature ejaculation because there is too much of fear associated with sexuality. And the fear has two components, the social component and this Oedipal component inside. So there can also be fear of the consequences in society, and there can also be the Oedipal fear inside. So and this is true for both men and women in the Freudian conceptualization of things. So for Freud, this is essentially a failure of non-resolution of the Oedipus complex, because of which a person moves away from sexuality, and we may see the person as asexual in terms of his macro orientation, or avoiding sex, or having less interest in sex, or not having an erection or sustaining an erection, or premature ejaculation. And in case of women, it will be inability to have interest or inability to be aroused or inability to have proper orgasm and too much of pain, what we call the penetration disorder or the pelvic pain disorder, because of the unresolved Oedipus complex. Because the act is understood to be inviting castration, and the castration seems to be a phenomenon which involves almost infinite, boundless pain, threat to survival, humiliation, shame, betrayal, and guilt. And these negative effects are so strong that one moves away from the pleasure of sexuality just to avoid these negative effects. So this is the Freud's explanation. Now let us come to the second one. What the Kleinian school has to say. The Kleinian school would explain this as the attack of the bad breast. That when you try to gain the goodness of the experience, you are attacked by the bad breast, or the bad mother, or the bad father. And often this split also informs the Oedipus and further distorts the Oedipus. So it can also be a combination of a person with an open split, unresolved split, moving into Oedipus, and then having the even more distorted, even more acutely unresolved Oedipus. Second. Third, it may be because of a power dynamic that the person may feel, the boy may feel the woman's body, woman to be too powerful, because of the kind of mother that he has seen. Or the girl may find the boy to be too powerful because of the kind of men figures they have seen. And then one feels that one is not just capable of engaging with such a powerful person. The Jungian explanation would be that one has not been able to evoke the contrasexual archetype or one's own archetype, the archetype of one's own gender. So a boy may not have found an adequate masculine figure looking at whom or role modeling whom or using whom for activating the archetype inside to activate his own masculinity. And therefore the person needs a good, stable, reliable father figure in the light and the presence of whom he can evoke his own masculinity. So there would be a lack of masculine figures around to activate one's own masculinity. Or correspondingly for women, lack of good mother figures to activate their own femininity. Or it may be very bad experiences with people of the opposite gender.
Okay.
That by orientation one is a heterosexual, but the real life experience with the people of the opposite gender, for the boy with the mother and for the girl with the father, may be so difficult that because of the emotional pain, one may not like to get close to anyone of the opposite gender in any situation, including the sexual situation. Then we have the more mystical psychoanalytic explanation, where the fantasy is, and it's completely unconscious, the man doesn't know it's there. The fantasy is that when the man looks at the woman's body or a woman at the man's body, there is a fear of merger into the body. And this is a very early infantile fear of the child who looks at the large body of the parents and fears that one may merge back into the body, often after knowing that one has come out of that body.
Okay.
So there is this fear of merger, and the very sight of a body, especially a nude body, again provokes those fears of fusion and merger. And therefore, this may lead to all the problems that are there in the chapter.
Right.
Then we have yet another more mystical psychoanalytic phenomena, that of displacing the bad objects into certain parts of the body. And this leads to a very strange kind of circumscribed sexual problem. For example, this is, I think, also mentioned in one of the books of Sudhir Thakkar, if I'm not wrong, where I think the idea, he says or somebody else says, but the idea is right, that the bad breast or the blown off pieces of the bad breast are put in fantasy into the sexual parts of the body of the opposite gender.
Okay.
And therefore, this leads to what is more popularly known as the whole phenomenon of vagina dentata. That the very entry into the sexual organ will mean that the bad objects who are there will mutilate, destroy, torture, and bite off our organs or bite off our body slowly and gradually by pulling us in.
Right.
So these bad objects residing into the sexual parts creates this unexplainable terror of that sexual part. And in this particular phenomena, the mystical and interesting and ironical part would be that the person may not have an erectile dysfunction problem for oral sex, but may have the same erectile dysfunction problem for the vaginal sex, because that is where the bad objects have been put. Okay? And this is where case history taking is very important, whether the sexual dysfunction is universal or whether it is specific to certain situations or in front of certain objects or certain situations or certain people or certain locations, some spaces. So these are the some of the uh, explanations. One more explanation, which is a cultural explanation, comes from some societies where uh, sexual dysfunctions are found more in one gender compared to the other. So in some societies like the Japanese society, they have a larger proportion of sexual interest or erection disorder in men compared to women, and most of these disorders are not of a very long-term nature. They go off, but they are there in the beginning, and that we have to do culturally with very dominating mothers or very dominating fathers. So
Okay.
there are spiritual aspects, cultural aspects, family aspects, and these deeper psychoanalytic aspects of the Kleinian, Freudian type or very mystical merging or very mystical putting the bad objects into sexual parts kind of things. Okay? And there can also be a mixture of this in the sense if the Oedipus is not resolved, one may use the mechanism of putting bad objects into the sexual parts of the other gender in order to prevent the actual Oedipal act or to punish oneself out of guilt. So it can be a defensive action also, it can be a pathological action also, it can be a guilt action also of putting the bad objects into the sexual parts of the other gender's body. So these are all of the psychoanalytic explanations and cultural explanations. And because in many cultures, this act is loaded with lot of fear, inhibition, and taboo, there might just be a ordinary cultural fear in the first few times one gets into this act, which may not have a psychoanalytic base, but just a cultural base in the first few times one tries this action. So these are the social, cultural, spiritual, and psychoanalytic reasons of causation of disorders given in this chapter.
Right, right. And how does psychoanalysis proceed with healing of sexual dysfunctions?
We start with the classical uh, Freudian or Kleinian school, whatever we are trained in. And of course, to talk these things, we have to first create a safe space so that the person does not feel shame or anticipate persecution from us before he discloses the taboo, inhibited, or shameful parts of himself. So, we first create a safe space. We remove the stigma associated with sexuality. We provide the person with an amoral atmosphere where heterosexuality, homosexuality, any orientation can be discussed without any persecution. And we then go into the deeper explorations based upon his real life incidents. So he will tell us that he tried something with X kind of person and did not work out, or he has attraction to X kind of person. And then from that real life incident, we'll be able to figure out what kind of issues are at play. Are there the Oedipal issues? Are there the open split issues, or are they a combination of the two? Or are we looking at something more mystical of the verger type or the displacement of or the parking of the bad objects type of phenomena? So whatever we get from the case history and the few sessions, we go along with that with the classical Freudian or Kleinian psychoanalytic psychotherapy. And this can be complemented very well by behavioral therapy. Because now this is something which is very delicate and very difficult. How do you do behavioral therapy in this kind of disorders? So people have found different kind of settings for it, because this also raises a lot of legal issues. So there have been sexual dysfunction group therapy efforts. There have been sexual dysfunction guided efforts where the psychiatrist or the healer is present during the sexual act, at least when the both of them are there in the hospital or some clinical setting, which is legally acceptable and permitted. So different countries permit different things. Correspondingly, whatever is legal and allowed is practiced in those countries on the behavioral front. The behavioral aspect and psychoanalytic aspect go together. But in the psychoanalytic terms, we would be looking at uh, twice a week, 6 months in mild cases, and twice or thrice a week for 2 years in more deeper, more difficult cases. So that would be the largely the flow of the psychoanalytic psychotherapy, preferably complemented by behavioral therapy, and also you can use a bit of holistic healing as well as psychoeducation to soften up the resistance.
Right. I'm just wondering, holistic healing is something we hear today all the time. Is there a way holistic healing approach can help in healing of sexual dysfunctions?
Yes, very much so. Uh, there are holistic healing groups dedicated to practically each disorder in the DSM. If not each disorder, at least each chapter, you can definitely find groups. They will be on Facebook, they will be meeting together, and all sorts of social activities are happening. First, what happens is if people meet having the same disorder, the feeling of being alone, feeling of being the condemned one, feeling of too much of anxiety, what has happened to me, that goes away, and one finds social support. So the first thing which is important in this kind of disorder, which evokes very high amount of shame and anger towards oneself for no reason, right? And an element of humiliation, is to go into groups and see that one is not alone. Hundreds of people have this disorder. Two,
Right.
people share their experiences which they cannot speak of in any other way in society because it's a taboo subject. So one is able to vent out oneself, one is able to speak uh, to people freely in those settings. Uh, Energy healing systems like Reiki and pranic healing also have certain ways of removing the difficult energies, difficult complexes from the sexual center, the Swadhisthana in their system. So Reiki and pranic healing also can help us in providing some relief. They may not be the central cure, but they may definitely help us in accelerating the cure.
Right.
Then we have homeopathy, which have medicines of its own, which are working at emotional and energy levels, and also can be successfully used to complement our therapy process. And in many cases, it so happens that homeopathy works so well that the person does not need therapy anymore. The problem is healed by homeopathy itself. Not always, but in some cases it happens. So then you have some exercises in yoga, particularly Kapalbhati, and some other yogic exercises, which put pressure on the sexual center, the Swadhisthana, 2 inches below the navel. And these are the exercises meant to clear up and purify that center. Then you have visualization exercises, certain mantras which are to be recited by concentrating at that center. And lastly, you have certain yogic exercises which are aimed at the bottom 3 centers. So we have a whole basket of holistic healing tools, which include homeopathy, Reiki, pranic healing, pranayama exercises, yogic postures, uh, homeopathy, and group support. All of these can accelerate our central work of psychoanalytic psychotherapy coupled by behavioral therapy and in some cases medication.
Right. So how is patient education important in the context of this disorders?
The first objective of patient education in this disorder is to stop running away, stop this denial, and accept the problem. That itself is the biggest problem. That there is huge amount of running away, and in more intelligent and sophisticated minds, the running away can easily take a spiritual color. That we may be seeing a person who talks spirituality and he says he is not into sexuality because of spirituality. Or he may have other reasons that I need to do great things in life and I don't have time for a family. Or it is too risky to get into relationships because I may lose my property in divorces. Or they may forge a variety of reasons to avoid emotional and sexual closeness with a woman or with a man.
Okay.
So from becoming a monk to a workaholic to a great leader to a variety of things. And many of them may also be projecting themselves as Casanovas in order to cover up the real sexual problem that they have. And the outcome will be that they will always be maintaining the distance with people of the opposite gender or same gender, whatever their orientation is. But they will maintain a distance so that it never gets to the sexual.
Right.
Because that would lead to a huge amount of fear, guilt of the Oedipus, or attack of the bad breast, or the mutilation of the displaced marked bad objects, mutilation done by them to us, and huge amount of shame and humiliation and inferiority within oneself for not being able to perform. So first is to stop these denials and have a very simple acceptance that yes, I have this problem. And second, get the person ready to solve this problem because it's a very painful and humiliating process. Running away is very easy. Going forward to heal oneself is very difficult. Acceptance is very difficult. Failing the first 3 times is very difficult. But there is no way out. We have to walk that path if we have to get healed. So this is the first part of psychoeducation. Second part, not to give up very easily because these are deeply buried complexes. They are not something which will go away in a week or 2. So one has to persist and not give up. Second. Third, be able to communicate about it to the therapist. Because if he does not communicate adequately and feels shameful, this issue cannot be explored and resolved and solved.
Right.
Fourth, remove the stigmatic element, the sinful element, taboo element from sexuality. It is very, very necessary to be done by psychoeducation in this particular chapter. Then provide psychoeducation to the patient so he can find out holistic healing tools, social support groups, at times even learn himself some of the holistic healing techniques like Reiki and pranic healing, so that if he does not have the, if he doesn't want to tell to anyone else, he can at least do it on himself. And lastly, he will be able to report much better to the healer or the doctor what is working or not working, and create for himself the do's and don'ts, which will help him accelerate his healing process.
Right. And what should the family members of caregivers do if they are helping someone with these disorders?
First is, this disorder is something that is extremely difficult for family members or the patient to talk to each other on this disorder. So most of the times it is through silence and through a silent support that you extend some help to the person. The important point is you don't persecute the person and not humiliate the person because of this. The help by omission itself is a very big help in this. So not persecuting the person, not humiliating the person, and as far as possible supporting the person, mostly silently, that we are with you, don't worry. What has happened has happened. We accept it and you work, do your best. Don't worry about it. We are with you. Whatever the consequences of your healing process, you may be successful, not successful, half successful. We are with you. That is a very big support you can give to patients of these disorders, because it's very difficult otherwise for parents and or family members to talk with the patient in details about this. That is one part. Second part, with due psychoeducation, the parents are able to manage their anger because they will face a lot of social criticism, especially in societies like India and many other South Asian societies, because of inability of the person in a particular area. So they have to learn to withstand that and not pass on the anger and anxiety created out of it onto the patient because of social censor or social shame. Third, they should be open about the person experimenting with various methods to heal himself, and be a little more flexible than what the ordinary morality allows them to do. They have to stretch slightly the boundaries of their morality, at least till the process of healing is on. Fourth, to have a clear set of do's and don'ts. Fifth, which help the person, of course, on their part. Fifth, help the person in the sense to find a social support group or holistic healing groups so that the person is able to walk faster on the path of healing. There are many contacts of social groups and holistic healers that the parents may have, the patient may not have. So one needs to use those things to help the patient. And lastly, to be able to report to the doctor or the therapist, right, if they know, because in these cases they may not know, unlike in other disorders. But if they know, for example, if it is a situation of a married couple and the girl is talking to the mother-in-law or something of that sort, then there is a possibility of doing certain things. So if that kind of communication is possible, then one can use that to better inform the healer or the doctor on what is working and not working. And lastly, save themselves from the shame, the anxiety and anger which may be created as a secondary problem in the family members because of this problem in the patient. So all this will be facilitated if we do the right psychoeducation of the parents.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya, for sharing your knowledge with us. We have covered today's sexual dysfunctions. In the subsequent videos, we will be covering other disorders from DSM-5 in the same way. Do watch our coming videos and write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Namaste.
Namaste.